I could feel the chill in the morning air the moment I stepped outside. My studio apartment sat in the heart of a bustling city where sidewalks were crowded. Cars whizzed by, and the smell of street food often lingered in the air. That morning, I stood at the edge of the curb, a little uncertain about how my day might unfold. The mirror in my hallway had reflected back a person with stubble on his cheeks, a small streak of eyeliner around his eyes, a charcoal gray button-up shirt, and a flowing maroon skirt swirling around his calves. My leather boots, sturdy and worn in, gave me the confidence to walk with my head high. I had to be at a local cafe in about half an hour to meet an acquaintance from college, but I was more nervous about the stares I'd face on the subway than the meeting itself. As I waited at the crosswalk, a couple who looked slightly older than me paused. Their eyes flickered over me, down to the skirt, then back up to my eyeliner. They exchanged glances before turning their attention back to the traffic lights. I could almost sense their confusion, yet for the first time in ages, I felt a small surge of determination. Whatever assumptions they made, that was on them. I brushed a bit of lint off my skirt and stepped forward once the light turned green. This wasn't the first time I'd worn clothes typically found in the women's section. I'd started experimenting sometime after my 21st birthday, cautiously at first. An occasional scarf, a ring or two, maybe a bold eyeliner on a night out. It was so gradual that even my closest friends had trouble noticing at first. But as I approached my mid-20s, I found a rhythm that felt real to me, combining the looser silhouette of a skirt with the practicality of a collared shirt, or pairing heavy boots with something typically labeled feminine. On days like this, I caught my reflection and thought, this is the blend I've been looking for. When I reached the subway station, my heart thumped in my chest and my palms felt clammy. I knew I'd get curious looks. The city was diverse, but people's imaginations could be limited. A quick glance around the platform showed me a slice of the world, people heading to offices in tailored suits, young students in hoodies and jeans, an older woman juggling a shopping cart. As I stepped onto the train, one seat opened near the middle. I sat and clutched my messenger bag, trying to project calm. A tall guy in a sports jersey stared for a moment, blinked, and then yawned as if I wasn't worth the effort. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, gave me a fleeting smile before she returned to scrolling on her phone. I inhaled a quiet breath and focused on the subway map overhead, reminding myself I had just 3 more stops to endure. The rhythmic bump and sway of the train, combined with the occasional automated announcement, filled my ears. I arrived at the cafe early. It was a snug little spot with wooden tables and a few antique decorations. The barista, a woman with bright orange hair, gave me a polite nod and asked, "What can I get for you?" "Just a latte," I replied, fumbling for my wallet. I offered her a gentle smile. She didn't react awkwardly to my outfit. Her gaze was straightforward, professional. A small rush of relief swept over me. I settled at a table near the window, sipping the latte, savoring the foam on my lips. That morning, I was meeting Emma, a friend I hadn't seen in over a year. We had taken a communications course together in college, and our circle of classmates had gravitated toward each other during group projects and late-night study sessions. She texted me out of the blue 2 days prior, wanting to catch up. The last time we'd seen each other, I was in denim jeans and a t-shirt. I wondered if she'd be surprised by my current look. Right on cue, Emma arrived, pushing through the cafe door in a flurry of laughter and greeting. Her eyes landed on me, and she let out a delighted squeal. "Wow, it's so good to see you." She practically rushed over, and we hugged awkwardly around the little round table. "You too," I said, settling back into my seat and smoothing out the fabric of my skirt. Emma ordered a mocha, then dropped her purse on the chair next to her. She brushed her dark curls aside and gave me a friendly once-over. "You look cool," she said simply, a note of sincere admiration in her voice. "I've never seen you in something like that, but it suits you." That eased some of the tension in my chest. "Thanks," I responded, feeling a slight heat in my cheeks. "I've been exploring clothes from different sections for a while." She leaned in, dropping her voice a bit. "I love the eyeliner. I'm all for mixing it up. Honestly, it's refreshing seeing you look so comfortable in your skin." I nodded, trying not to grin too broadly. Figured it was time for me to stop trying to fit in boxes that aren't made for me. I paused, careful not to use specific words I typically use to describe this process. "I like messing around with these styles, kind of right in the middle, you know?" "Absolutely. And that's a brave choice around here. People always talk about open-mindedness, but there's a lot of judging eyes, right?" "Tell me about it," I said with a soft laugh. "I've lost count of the times I've felt stares on the train, or that slight hush when you walk into a store and they don't know if they should refer me to the men's section or the women's." Emma took a sip of her mocha, then exhaled. "Well, if anyone can handle that, it's you. You were always the type to keep pushing forward. Remember in class when—" She leaned in, beginning a light-hearted anecdote about the time our group had to present a marketing project. Her story meandered through old memories, from comedic mishaps to the proud day we all graduated. Our conversation carried on for nearly an hour. We laughed about old classmates and their career paths, gossiped about a professor or two, and swapped updates on our current lives. I told her I was working part-time at a design studio, dabbling in some freelance illustration to make ends meet, and using the rest of my time to figure out more personal projects. She was chasing her dream job in event planning, and it sounded like she was already making waves in that industry. Eventually, Emma glanced at her phone and sighed. "I've got a meeting soon, but let's do this again. You're still you, and I've missed your perspective." Her ease in acknowledging my chosen style felt like a weight off my shoulders. "Absolutely," I said. "I missed you too. Let's hang out soon." We stood and hugged again. She gave my skirt a playful flick and joked, "Next time you can take me shopping." I walked out of the cafe feeling surprisingly lighthearted. One conversation where I wasn't singled out or grilled made all the difference. The sense of relief lingered as I navigated my way through mid-morning crowds. Rather than heading straight home, I decided to swing by a favorite vintage store a few blocks away. They specialized in unique items, flowy blouses, sturdy jackets, hats from decades past. In that shop, I always felt free to peruse every rack without glances from the staff. The store's bell jingled when I stepped in. A friendly voice called from behind a rack of coats. "Morning, let me know if you need help." I offered a quick wave. I thumbed through a variety of clothes, pausing at a pair of wide-legged trousers that were an odd but appealing blend of masculine and feminine cuts. After a moment, I slipped them off the rack, balancing them over my arm, and continued searching. It felt like an adventure, discovering pieces that spoke to me. Just then, a tall man with a warm smile emerged from behind a different rack. He wore jeans and a sweater with a small tear near the collar. I recognized him as the store's owner, Dante. "Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks," he said cheerfully. "What are you hunting for today?" I held up the trousers. "Not sure yet. I was just browsing. These look interesting." Dante laughed softly. "They came in last week. They might be a bit big on the waist, but you're welcome to try them. The fitting rooms are open." I nodded in appreciation and headed for the fitting room. Once inside, I slid off my skirt and attempted to pull on the trousers. They were indeed a bit loose, but I liked the drape of the fabric. A belt could fix the waist. I checked the mirror, turning this way and that. The fit around my ankles was just right, but the waist felt like it was floating. Still, it had potential. Stepping out of the fitting room, I found Dante waiting with a curious eye. "They suit you," he said. With a nice belt and maybe some layering on top, they'd look fantastic. I turned toward the full-length mirror near the counter. My eyeliner contrasted sharply with the structured cut of the trousers, and I pictured them with my leather boots. It felt right. I'll take them, I decided, a smile curving on my lips. At the register, Dante asked, "So, how's everything going? You look more confident each time you come in." I tried not to let the moment grow too sentimental. "Ups and downs," I admitted, "but I'm figuring out how to stay comfortable. This city can be tough, but I'm getting used to some of the stairs." He bagged the trousers. "We all have our own journeys. Keep doing what you're doing." He handed me the purchase, no judgment in his eyes, just genuine warmth. I thanked him and stepped out of the shop, nearly bumping into a passing couple. After muttering a quick apology, I took a moment on the sidewalk, looking up at the swath of skyscrapers overhead. The day was still young, and I had freelance sketches to finish at home. For a second, I felt deeply aware of the swirl of energies around me. Cars honking, people rushing by, me standing in a swirl of movement wearing a half-mask, half-femme outfit. It felt right, like I was occupying the space I was meant to fill, without wanting to be pinned down as only one thing. When I got home, I tossed the vintage store bag on the small couch and cracked open my laptop. Freelance illustration had been my main source of income lately, designing logos, creating caricatures, even some layout work for small magazines. It helped pay rent, and as an added bonus, it allowed me to be myself without a strict dress code. I settled down at my desk, which was essentially a slab of wood propped on 2 filing cabinets, and opened the design software. While I sketched, my mind wandered. I thought about my parents, who lived in a quieter suburb a few hours away. They knew about my style changes, but we hadn't actually sat down to talk about it in depth. My mother had made polite suggestions like, "Just be cautious in public," and "You know how some people can be." But she never outright disapproved. My father, on the other hand, rarely said anything about it. I'd show up wearing something clearly from the wrong section of a clothing store, and he'd nod hello, silently measuring me with his eyes. It was the elephant in the room we never addressed. Late that afternoon, I received a text from my mother. "Any chance you can come visit this weekend? Dad's making his famous chili, and your aunt is coming over too." I felt a surge of nerves. My aunt was outspoken, the kind of person who made side comments about everything. If I wore even slightly unusual clothes, she'd be the first to crack jokes. Still, it was family. I typed back, "Sure, I can make it. See you Saturday." Saturday rolled around more quickly than I expected. I traveled by bus to my parents' house, wearing a more toned-down outfit than usual. Slim black pants that hugged my legs but flared slightly at the bottom, a fitted crew-neck t-shirt, and a denim jacket. I kept my eyeliner subtle, just enough to accent my eyes. I still had my beard, neatly trimmed. The bus ride felt like déjà vu, reminding me of all those times I went back for the holidays and tried to figure out how, myself, I could appear without causing waves. My mother greeted me at the door with a warm hug. She was in her mid-50s, her hair showing a bit of silver, but she carried herself with a sense of calm. "There you are," she said. "Come on in. You must be starving." She led me to the living room where my father was watching a documentary about nature. He stood up and gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder. "Good to see you," he said, glancing down at my pants, then back up. "How's life in the city?" "It's going all right," I answered, making a conscious effort to keep my shoulders relaxed. "Work's been steady." Before we could sink into an uncomfortable silence, my Aunt Caroline appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was a petite woman in her early 60s, with sharp eyes and a ready laugh. "You made it," she exclaimed. "Long trip?" "Not too bad," I replied, bracing myself. I could almost feel her gaze taking inventory. The subtle eyeliner, the fit of my clothes, the small ear stud I had put in recently. She raised an eyebrow, but then gave me a half smile. "Your father was telling me you do some design work. That must be interesting. You always were creative, right?" I nodded, surprised she didn't plunge right into commentary about my attire. "Yeah, I do a bit of everything. Illustrations, digital designs, and some layout projects. It pays the bills." Caroline shrugged. "That's nice. Come on, the chili's about ready." We all sat around the dinner table not long after, bowls of steaming chili in front of us. The conversation bounced from topic to topic: local politics, the weather, a new restaurant that opened downtown. For the first half of the meal, I found myself waiting for Caroline to say something pointed about my looks. But maybe age had mellowed her, or maybe she decided it was none of her business. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious about my job. My father kept quiet for most of it, occasionally offering a comment about sports. My mother, meanwhile, tried to coax him into talking more, but he stayed mostly neutral. I wondered if he was wrestling with internal questions about my attire or simply uninterested in discussing it. By the end of the meal, I felt a bit more at ease. Caroline sighed contentedly and said, "Well, that was delicious. What's for dessert?" My mother brightened. "I made an apple pie. Let me get that." We migrated to the living room with plates of pie. My mother pressed play on some old home videos from my childhood, a tradition whenever I visited. Soon the screen showed a small version of me, around age 10, running around in the backyard. My father chuckled at the memory, and even Caroline leaned forward, engaged in the nostalgic footage. There I was, sporting a buzz cut, wearing grass-stained shorts, free as could be. In the video, my mother was calling me in for dinner while my father fiddled with the camera. I glanced at the real-life versions of them, noticing how time had softened their faces. My mother caught my eye and smiled fondly. For a moment, I remembered simpler days when I didn't think about clothes beyond whether they were comfortable. Then came puberty, peer pressure, ideas of what I was supposed to look like. It felt both distant and strangely close, like a memory pinned under glass. Late in the evening, as I prepared to head to the guest room, my father cleared his throat. "Hey," he said, stopping me in the hallway. "Got a minute?" I nodded, heart thumping a little. We stepped into his study, an old-fashioned room lined with books and trophies from his younger days in sports. He stood awkwardly by the desk, tapping a pen against his palm. "So, your mother and I have noticed your, outfits when you come around." My stomach twisted, but I kept my expression calm. "Yes?" He exhaled softly. "Look, it's your life. I know I haven't really said anything, and maybe that was wrong of me. I don't exactly know what to say." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I understand. It's not exactly typical, but it's something that feels authentic to me." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I guess I don't get it. I'm an old guy who grew up in a different time. All this is new to me, but it's clear you're not uncomfortable, and I suppose that's what matters." I swallowed a knot of emotion. I might not hear him say direct acceptance, another word I tried to avoid in this conversation, but this was more than I'd expected. "Thanks for saying that. It helps." He reached out and patted my shoulder again, his eyes softer than before. "You're my kid. That doesn't change. Just be careful out there, okay?" "I will," I replied. "I promise." That night, I lay in the guest bed, swirling with thoughts. I didn't need a grand speech from him or a 180-degree shift in attitude. What I heard was enough to let me know he still cared. That alone eased some of the tension I'd been carrying for months. The next morning, I said my farewells to everyone and took the bus back. My mind played back the subtle nod of approval from my father. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and that gave me a quiet sense of relief. When I returned to the city, I found a voicemail on my phone from a friend named Dylan. He was someone I'd met at a local art supply shop. He had a shaved head, a nose ring, and an armful of colorful tattoos. Over the past year, we'd grabbed coffee and exchanged tips about new art techniques. I clicked play. "Hey," Dylan's voice crackled. "There's a local open mic night tomorrow. Some friends of mine are playing music, and it might be cool for you to see. They're all pretty chill. Let me know if you're up for it." An open mic night sounded like exactly the breath of fresh air I needed after the tense weekend. I dialed him back and left a quick message that I'd love to go. The following evening, I found myself in a small venue downtown, a cozy bar with a tiny stage at the back. The brick walls were covered in amateur paintings and chalk messages announcing upcoming performers. I got there early, wearing loose black trousers, my old boots, a short-sleeved shirt, and a thin layer of eyeliner. My jacket had silver studs on the collar, just enough flair to make me feel stylish. Dylan greeted me near the bar. "You made it," he said, giving me a fist bump. He wore a sleeveless hoodie that showed off his tattoos. "The band I was telling you about goes on in like 20 minutes. The place was filling up with a mix of artists, musicians, students, and random passers-by. We snagged a small table near the stage. Over the next half hour, a parade of local talent performed. A nervous poet stuttering out verses about city life, a folk guitarist singing heartfelt tunes, and an upbeat duo who performed a comedic rap about daily struggles. Then Dylan's friends, an indie rock band named Flooded Aurora, took the stage. The lead singer was a tall woman with dyed red hair and a throaty voice. She belted out lyrics about heartbreak, resilience, and forging new paths. The guitarist and drummer backed her up with a raw energy that ignited the crowd. Dylan bobbed his head, occasionally shouting encouragement. I let the beat wash over me, enjoying the freedom of the moment. It was the kind of environment where no one cared how I dressed, as long as I joined in the vibe. After the performance, Dylan introduced me to the band. The lead singer grinned and said, "So you're the artist Dylan told me about. He showed me some of your sketches on Instagram." I nodded, feeling a quick surge of warmth. "Yeah, thanks for taking a look." The bassist, a lanky person with short cropped hair and eyebrow piercings, eyed me appreciatively. "I love the boots," they said. "I keep telling folks I need a pair of sturdy black ones like that." I smiled. "Vintage store find. You should definitely get a pair if you can. They go with just about anything." We chatted for a while longer, sharing stories about the local art scene. The camaraderie was easy and inviting. Nobody questioned why I looked the way I did, which was a welcome relief. When the night wound down, Dylan and I stepped outside into the brisk air, letting the door shut behind us. "Glad you came," Dylan said, flipping up his hood. "Sometimes it helps to be around folks who don't stare." "Definitely," I replied, looking up at the flickering street lamp. "Thanks for inviting me. I needed this." Dylan shrugged casually. "You're good company. I think we all connect with each other's sense of style and creativity." I gave him a friendly punch on the shoulder. "Yeah, man. See you later?" "Sure thing," he said, slipping away into the night. Over the next few weeks, a routine settled in. I'd work on my freelance gigs, meet up with Dylan and other art-minded folks, and occasionally see Emma for coffee. My wardrobe continued to evolve, with new finds from thrift stores and the vintage shop. The city itself still gave me the occasional raised eyebrow or sideways glance, but I no longer felt the gnawing sense of dread. If someone was confused by my eyeliner and beard combo, that was their problem. In the midst of this, I landed a small contract with a local startup that needed design work. It required me to occasionally pop into their office for meetings. That was a whole new arena. Small talk at the water cooler, staff gatherings for birthdays, and the usual office politics. On my first visit, I decided to wear my charcoal gray slacks, a crisp white button-down, and a deep plum vest. I kept my eyeliner subtle, more smoky than stark, and tied my hair in a low ponytail. I remembered Emma saying, "Own it," and that became my mantra. Walking into that office, I could feel a shift in the air. Startups tended to be more liberal, but I saw the receptionist's eyes widen a fraction when she noticed my vest and subtle makeup. She blinked, then smiled brightly. "You must be the designer," she said. "Conference room's down the hall. Help yourself to coffee." I thanked her, quietly noting how quickly she reset herself to professional courtesy. In the conference room, the CEO, a younger woman dressed in a patterned blazer, greeted me enthusiastically. "We've been excited to see your ideas," she said, motioning to a seat. The rest of the team, 4 people in their 20s or 30s, nodded in greeting. No weird vibes, no uncomfortable questions. We jumped straight into color palettes, typography, and scheduling. It felt like a glimpse of how life could be. People seeing me for my skills and contributions rather than my outfit. During a break, one of the employees named Kira approached me at the coffee station. She had bright pink streaks in her short hair. She glanced at my vest. "I really dig your style," she said softly. "Thanks," I replied, stirring some cream into my coffee. "You look great too. I love the hair." Kira grinned, tapping the pink streaks. "I got bored one weekend and decided why not. Anyway, your design mock-ups are awesome. Looking forward to seeing how the final version turns out." As she walked away, I felt a swell of pride. It wasn't a big dramatic moment, but small interactions like this stitched themselves into my daily life, offering normalcy and letting me breathe easier. Of course, not every moment was a breeze. There were times on the subway where a group of rowdy passengers would snicker or murmur loudly, "Yo, check out the dude in eyeliner," accompanied by chuckles. Once or twice I'd hear the word weirdo under someone's breath. Moments like that stung more than I cared to admit. But I'd learned to focus on my destination or reread a text conversation with a supportive friend to remind myself that the rest of the world was bigger than a few rude strangers. One night, after a long day of work, I stopped by a grocery store to pick up a few things. As I was choosing apples, an older man in the produce aisle paused, did a double take, and sighed loudly. "World's gone crazy," he muttered, shaking his head. He ambled away without waiting for a response. I stood there with a pink lady apple in my hand, momentarily stunned by his unsolicited commentary. In the past, that might have ruined my mood for days. Now it made my heart pound, but I pressed my lips tight and carried on shopping. People could have their opinions. It wasn't going to change who I was. That weekend, Emma texted me again. "There's a new clothing boutique that just opened on 5th. Want to go check it out?" I took her up on the offer. We met in front of a sleek storefront with minimalist decor behind large glass windows. The sign overhead read "Undefined," which gave me immediate hope that this shop might cater to folks who didn't fit in neat categories. Inside, the clothes were organized on racks not by gender, but by color and style. There were baggy pants, fitted jackets, skirts with bold prints, and button-down shirts with playful accents. Staff members walked around, offering suggestions without any hint of old-fashioned assumptions. Emma beamed at me. "This place is perfect for you." I grinned. It's about time someone created a layout like this. We spent the next hour flipping through clothes. I found a dark green skirt with subtle pockets on the side, and Emma teased me that I'd soon have more skirts than she did. In turn, I encouraged her to try on a crisp vest that she found near a row of jackets. We both left the store with new pieces in our bags, feeling triumphant. Strolling out into the late afternoon sunshine, we grabbed a bench in a nearby park to chat. Emma looked thoughtful. "You remember how shy you used to be in college?" I chuckled. "Vaguely. I guess I was a little reserved." She nudged me lightly. No, you were practically invisible sometimes. I'm just glad to see you carrying yourself differently now. Yeah, I said, glancing at the bustling park paths. I'm trying to be unapologetic about it. A street performer started playing guitar on the corner, and we listened for a while, content in a shared silence. Emma eventually stood to go, giving me a quick hug before heading off to her next errand. I watched her weave through the crowd, thinking about how nice it was to have friends who saw me, really saw me, and stuck around. That night, I laid out the new green skirt, pairing it with a black shirt and a thin belt, just to see how it would look. My reflection in the mirror showed a person who'd once felt he had to fit in one category or another. Now, with each day, each outfit, each conversation, I was carving out a space in between. I remembered the day I first dared to wear eyeliner in public, trembling at the bus stop, expecting the worst. The journey since then had been a sequence of complicated steps forward, with a few stumbles back. Yet I no longer felt consumed by the idea that I had to choose. I liked my stubble, my sometimes unruly hair, the swirl of a skirt around my legs, and the easy confidence of heavy boots on concrete. After a few more months, I scheduled another visit to my parents. This time, I thought carefully about what to wear. Should I tone it down again? Was it worth the mental chess game of deciding how out there I could be? In the end, I chose a pair of those wide-legged trousers from Dante's shop, a short-sleeved blouse with subtle floral patterns, and no jacket. My eyeliner was delicate, and I wore a small ring on each hand. A part of me thought, they've seen me in a skirt before. This isn't going to be a shock. The reunion at the house was quieter this time. My aunt wasn't visiting. My parents seemed more relaxed as they welcomed me in. My mother offered me tea in the kitchen, and my father asked how work was going. The evening passed without any major tension. We watched a football game together, ate a simple meal, and chatted about everyday life. Maybe it was the small conversation I'd had with my father during my last visit. Maybe it was time doing its job, or maybe they'd realized I wasn't changing course. Either way, the undercurrent of unease had lessened. Later that night, while helping my mother tidy the kitchen, she paused in front of the sink, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You seem happier lately," she said, carefully choosing her words. "I notice you're more you these days." I felt a twist of gratitude in my chest. "I'm doing what I need to do." She nodded, a solemn warmth in her eyes. "I just worry about how the world can be, but I respect that you won't hide who you are." I gently corrected her, avoiding certain words. "Thank you. It makes a difference that you're trying to understand." She patted my cheek, then turned to rinse the dishes, the conversation settling into a comfortable hush. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I let the memories swirl, the younger me rummaging in my mother's closet, intrigued by the patterns of her dresses, the teenage me flipping through men's magazines, finding them rigidly narrow about style, the confusion of not wanting to fully tilt toward traditional femininity either. It was a strange nostalgia, thinking back to all those years I felt like a puzzle piece with the edges shaved off to fit an image. But now I had finally decided to let my edges stand out. Sure, some folks might not like it, but it felt like the only way to breathe freely. Back in the city the next day, I got off the bus and took the long walk to my apartment. The crowds were thick, but I maneuvered with steady steps. I caught glimpses of my reflection in glass windows, noticing how my trousers flowed with each stride, the floral design on my blouse peeking out from beneath my messenger bag strap. In passing reflections, I saw a person forging a path that might not be neat or easy, but it was mine. That weekend, Dylan invited me to another open mic night. This time, he wanted me to bring some sketches to display briefly, as part of a collaborative art and music showcase. I arrived early to help him set up. We pinned a few of my illustrations on a wooden display board close to a corner where a painter was setting up a live demonstration. The bar was already buzzing with people, and the atmosphere was thick with the promise of creativity and shared passions. Once the music started, I moved through the crowd, quietly gauging reactions to my artwork. I spotted a woman in a leather jacket pointing at one of my pieces, a cityscape drawn with bold lines, capturing the frenetic energy of rush hour traffic. She nodded appreciatively, then turned to me, noticing the floral blouse. "Is this your work?" she asked, gesturing at the sketch. "It is," I answered, bracing for a question about my attire. But she simply said, "It's amazing. I can almost feel the movement." "Thanks," I replied, smiling. I wanted to capture the pulse of the city. She introduced herself as Sam, a local tattoo artist. We chatted about the intricacies of line work and the challenges of balancing detail with emotion. Not once did she comment on my beard or my eyeliner or my blouse, and that in itself felt like a small win. A few minutes later, she drifted off to admire the painter's live demonstration, and Dylan found me in the throng. "People love your stuff," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Don't forget to drop your contact info. I heard someone mention wanting to commission a piece." I scrambled to grab a few business cards from my bag, laying them on a small table near the display. The band was about to start playing, so Dylan and I slipped back to the audience area. The stage lights flickered, and an alternative rock group launched into a set list that was somehow both mellow and edgy. I found myself swaying to the beat, letting the guitars and drums wash away the day's stress. At one point, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning, I saw a guy in a beanie, maybe a bit older than me, with kind eyes and a curious expression. "Sorry, didn't mean to bug you," he said over the music. "But I saw your booth with those drawings. I love the style. You have a card I can take?" "Yeah, of course," I replied, handing one to him. "Happy to talk about any projects you have in mind." He thanked me and gave a quick thumbs up before returning to the crowd. It was one of those fleeting moments that reminded me how far I'd come. A while ago, I might have been too self-conscious to stand in a bar wearing a floral blouse and a faint trace of lip gloss, handing out business cards for my creative work. Yet there I was, immersed in a swirl of new connections and unspoken acceptance of who I was. When the performance ended, I helped Dylan break down the display. We carried the leftover flyers and my sketches to a back room. He gave me a playful nudge. "Didn't I tell you this was a great idea? You're basically half booked for new commissions." I laughed softly. "Looks that way. Thanks for pushing me to do this." He shrugged. "Hey, that's what friends do." After packing up, we stepped out into the crisp night air. The city lights flickered off the wet pavement as it had rained earlier. Dylan hopped on his bike and I decided to walk, needing time to process the evening. Meandering through the quiet streets, I reflected on the small but significant transformations in my life. How the stairs were balanced out by supportive friendships. How my parents were coming to terms with my style. How I felt less like I was hiding. I thought of each conversation, each garment I dared to wear, each moment I worried about the reaction, only to find acceptance, or, at worst, mild confusion. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my boots and flopped onto the couch. My phone buzzed with a few new texts. Emma checking on me, my mom sending a recipe she thought I might like, a potential client inquiring about the price of a custom design. It was a small flurry of normalcy. I smiled at how my circle was shaping up. I let my gaze wander to the clothes rack in the corner of my studio, where skirts hung alongside trousers, cardigans next to tailored shirts. A pair of chunky heels sat by a row of boots. To many, it might look chaotic, like two different wardrobes jumbled together. But to me, it was a tapestry of options, each piece reflecting some facet of my style. I remembered how I once tiptoed into these clothes, nervous about what they signified. Now they were simply part of my everyday existence. The next morning, I woke up late, brewed coffee, and sat at my desk to start sketching. Pencil lines began forming on the page, an abstract figure standing between two shifting shapes, neither fully one nor the other. I spent hours tinkering with the shades, the silhouettes, the negative space. When I finally paused, I realized I'd poured something personal into that piece. It was a quiet statement of who I was, someone blending categories, not looking to pass as anything but my own person. As the weeks turned to months, life continued with its ebb and flow. Some days I'd dress in a plain t-shirt and jeans, not feeling any particular urge to experiment. Other days, I'd step out in a bold skirt and a half-buttoned vest, enjoying the swirl of motion and the subtle shimmer of eyeshadow. I started receiving more commissions from local businesses and online referrals. Each new project brought me in contact with a range of personalities, some openly intrigued by my style, others politely indifferent, and a rare few who dismissed me at first glance. But the ratio of positivity to negativity seemed to favor the former. One of the bigger breakthroughs came when the startup I'd been freelancing for decided to keep me on retainer. The CEO wrote me an email praising both my work ethic and my creative flair. The subtext was clear. They admired my output, and they didn't care what I wore while creating it. That felt like a moment of quiet victory. On a sunny afternoon, I decided to celebrate by swinging by the vintage store. Dante greeted me with his usual grin. "Haven't seen you in a while. Got some new arrivals you might like." He pointed to a rack near the window. Stuff from the 70s, a mix of cargo pants, embroidered jackets, and dresses with interesting prints. I browsed until I came across an embroidered jacket that made my heart skip. It had delicate designs around the cuffs, a subtle floral pattern along the lapels, and wide pockets. Exactly the kind of piece that sat right in the middle, bridging the lines between masculine structure and feminine detail. I tried it on, and it fit like it was tailored for me. Dante watched, nodding in approval. "That's the one, isn't it?" "It's perfect," I said, turning to the mirror. He wrapped it up for me, and as I paid, I told him about my recent surge in freelance work. He listened, genuinely happy for me. "You're carving out a place in the design scene," he said, handing me the bag. "Keep that up." Walking home, I slipped the jacket on, letting the evening breeze rustle the embroidery. I thought about how far I'd come. Despite moments of unease, side glances, and the occasional rude comment, I felt stronger in my convictions. Each supportive word from friends, each subtle nod from my father, and each moment of kindness from strangers had woven into something solid in me. The following weekend, Emma and I organized a small get-together at her apartment. She invited a handful of people from her event planning circle, along with Dylan and a couple of mutual acquaintances. The evening was filled with easy laughter, music, and homemade snacks. I showed up in dark jeans, the embroidered jacket, and a slim shirt underneath. A new friend complimented the jacket, and instead of bracing for any negativity, I simply thanked them. It felt good not to explain or justify. Later in the night, Emma cornered me in the kitchen while we refilled the snack bowls. She clinked her wine glass against my water glass. "To living authentically," she said, then paused, winking as if she realized she'd almost used a word we'd avoided. "I mean, to living as we choose." I laughed, tapping my glass to hers. "Cheers to that." The rest of the evening flew by. Dylan tried to teach us all a clumsy line dance, leading to half of us tripping over our feet. Emma's coworkers talked about wild event mishaps, and we howled at the stories. When I finally made it home, I felt a rush of contentment, the kind that settled deep in my chest. In the weeks that followed, the city's seasons began to shift. Warmer days arrived, and with them came new challenges. Wearing airy tops, maybe pairing them with skirts that allowed breezes to roll across my legs. I stood in front of a mirror on a bright morning, deciding whether or not to keep my beard trimmed close or let it grow a bit. I thought about the confusion it might spark, but also the sense of honest expression it gave me. Ultimately, I let the stubble remain. It was a part of me, just like my fondness for coal liner. Work projects flowed steadily, and I found myself with enough spare money to upgrade some worn-out supplies. On one afternoon trip for art supplies, I caught sight of a reflection in the shop's window. A person wearing a short-sleeved pink blouse, cargo pants, and brand-new boots. The eyeliner was faint, the beard neatly groomed. I recognized my own posture, relaxed shoulders, head held high. In that fleeting moment, I understood just how much had changed in a year. Back home, I tidied up my studio, organizing clothes, storing away winter garments, and hanging up lighter pieces for the warm season ahead. A section of the rack held the skirt that started it all, the maroon one that brushed my legs with a whisper of fabric. That piece had felt revolutionary the first time I wore it publicly. Now it was simply another cherished option. I decided it was time for a small personal celebration. I invited Dylan, Emma, and a couple more friends to a nearby bar that had a decent karaoke setup. It was a humble place, not too fancy, but cozy enough for a laid-back evening. We piled into a large booth, ordering appetizers and drinks. Emma volunteered to sing first, belting out an old pop hit with gusto. The rest of us cheered and clapped. Dylan went next, awkwardly but enthusiastically tackling a rock ballad. My turn came, and I stood on the tiny stage, the microphone heavy in my hand. I announced a classic tune, the opening chords played, and I started singing. My voice was shaky at first, but by the chorus, I found a groove. Glancing at the booth, I saw my friends cheering, raising their glasses, rooting for me. In their faces, I saw warmth and acceptance. Yes, that word was unspoken, but there it was in their eyes. I let the music flow through me, not caring if I hit every note perfectly. When I finished, Emma and Dylan nearly knocked me over with a group hug. We spilled back into the booth, adrenaline pumping. The rest of the night was a blur of laughter, silly inside jokes, and repeated toasts to the small joys in life. I went home with a light heart and a comforting sense that I'd found a circle of people who would cheer me on no matter how I dressed. That evening, before bed, I stood by my window overlooking the city lights. The traffic hummed below, a distant ocean of headlights. I rested a hand on the windowsill, letting the reflection of my face mingle with the sprawling skyline. The swirling, multifaceted journey continued. Clothes from both sides of the aisle, bits of makeup highlighting features I never thought to celebrate, a beard that I cherished more than I'd expected, and a daily determination to move forward. In that gentle glow of city lights, I remembered the original statement that had guided my decisions. It wasn't about trying to pass as anyone else, but about carving out a blend of styles right in the middle. It meant pulling together all the parts that felt genuine. My love for sturdy boots, my fascination with a flowing skirt, the scribbles in my sketchbook, and the silent support from family and friends. Perhaps not everyone would understand, but I wasn't dressing for them. I was dressing for me. I closed the curtain, turned off the light, and slid into bed, breathing out the tension of the day. Tomorrow would come with its own set of challenges and surprises, but I felt ready. I'd keep wearing what resonated. I'd keep embracing all those influences I couldn't neatly put in one box, and I'd keep building a world around me where that was simply how things were. And so I drifted to sleep, secure in the knowledge that I had chosen the path that felt most authentic, somewhere in that space between.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.